This conference will now be recorded.
So in the previous session, we have seen what are the different things that we need to keep in mind when we talk about any requirement and how do we create the objects, all these things, right? So in today's session, we'll talk about an real-time scenario, okay? And what are the things or points that we need to keep in mind when we actually want to implement that interface so that it will be easy for you to work on any interface that you get, okay, in your projects. So yeah, so these are the points that we discussed in the previous session, right? So these are the points that I told you that we need to keep in mind. So by based on these points, I'll give you one requirement now, then try to answer the questions what we have according to the requirement what I'm giving you, so that it will be easy for you to understand or analyze the requirement by yourself, okay? So the requirement goes like this, where PI has to pick a file from file server location and place it in another server. So by reading this line, what you understood, what is your requirement? So by reading this line, what is the requirement or what did you understand?
Uh, Sender is non-SAP, receiver is non-SAP.
Okay, what else you understood?
We need to pick a file from one location to another.
So PI has to
Pick a file.
pick a file, and then what else? What else you understood?
We need to use FTP adapter thing.
Okay, so here they did not mention whether it is FTP or SFTP,
Okay.
but apart from that, what else you understood? So you will pick the file using PI. After that, what you will do? Can you read the statement again?
PA has to pick a file from one server location, place it in another file server location.
Okay, so what does it mean? It means PI will pick the file. After that,
Place
what PI
place
will
the
do?
file. Yeah. Place the file
Ah,
in another location. Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense now?
Yeah.
Others, do you understand? Guys, please try to be interactive. At least let me know if you are able to follow, understand, or not. These are the very basic things that you need to understand, or else it will be very difficult for you to work on these requirements or understand how a requirement has been given to you and how to analyze that requirement. Again and again, I'm saying you, this is for your understanding only. I'm not going to lose anything if you don't understand. Okay, my that's why I'm asking you to be interactive and let me know whether you're able to understand what is that you understood, all these things. Okay, so first thing first, These are the two things that you understood. And you mentioned that here a sender is non-SAP and receiver is non-SAP. That's not the case. So there are cases where we communicate with SAP systems also using file communication. So right now, that's not confirmed that whether you are SAP, whether a sender is non-SAP or receiver is non-SAP or SAP. That's not yet confirmed because we communicate with SAP applications also using file. Okay, so you don't know what is your sender and what is your receiver at this point of time. So now, what are the questions that you need to keep in mind? So do you know what is sender and what is receiver? No. This is something that you need to ask. Then they mentioned it as a file server. What is that file server? Whether it is FTP or SFTP. Which one it is? Because if it is FTP, we use file adapter. If it is SFTP, we use SFTP adapter. So what is the file server they are referring to here? That is something that you need to know. Then other file server details are location details. Location details in the sense path or directory, which file should be picked, or file name to be used while creating file on receiver side. So all these things are the details that you need to know, which should be configured as part of your file. You will come to know more about them when we talk about file adapter configuration. Okay, next. Was it synchronous or asynchronous? That is also not mentioned here. So that is also something that you need to understand. Because this is a file-based communication, definitely it will be an asynchronous communication. Okay, file cannot be, by default file will not work for synchronous communications. File adapter will not support synchronous communications, wherein it supports only asynchronous communication. Next, what is the schema? Did they provide you the schema? No, they did not provide you the schema. So better you get the schema or mapping sheet, so that you can understand what is your source structure and what is your target structure and how you can map it. Okay, protocol you understood. Where if depending on the file server, you can use a file adapter or SFTP adapter, right? So this is not a pass through. If it is a pass through, then you don't need anything. You just pick the file and place the file in the target site. If it is normal, then you go for a mapping sheet and you do the data validations at the runtime. So this is how you have to analyze the requirement and what is the information that is missing. So you have to get that information, relevant information. So now I'm going to give all that information for you. So my first thing is PI has to pick the file from source location and PI has to place the file in the other source server location, file server location. Now my sender is, so we should be having some sender here, like let us assume that BC underscore sender A. This is my sender component. Receiver is, let us assume that your sender is a sender A, and we already have or we create a business component called BC underscore sender A. Similarly, our receiver is a receiver A application. Okay, for this we create one business component called BC underscore receiver A. Fine. Next thing is um, file server. Our file server is FTP. Okay, and that too FTP, it's a local application server. We use protocol as NFS. Okay, so we'll see all these things later, but I'm giving you all the information right away. And what is the schema? Schema is the source file schema is first name, last name, is it I used location, company. Location, company. So this is a schema for my source data, and schema for my target data is name, location, company. Okay, so there is a change in the schema, so definitely I have to go for normal scenario. This cannot be a pass-through scenario because you are doing some data validations here. Okay, so that's why pass-through cannot be done for this. We don't even call this as a pass-through, we call this as a normal scenario. Okay, next thing is whether you go with ICO or classical. We go with ICO based configuration for this, which runs on a single stack application. Yeah, field level validations. Now, 1 second. Okay, so now we are going to use it ICO for our development, and then mapping sheet for this. I'll provide you the mapping sheet also. So Excel. So this is how a sample mapping sheet will be. Source schema, target schema. Okay, so you'll be having your source name and first name, source structure and target structure represented here. Last name. Next, what is the other thing that we have here? Location, company. Okay, so but on the target side you have name, then location, company. So the mapping rule for this is okay. So this is the mapping rule for name field validation. Location is direct, company is direct. What does it mean? It means direct means you can map a location with the location from source. You can map company with company from source. Okay, and so this is how you will be given the mapping sheet, where you'll be having source, target, and mapping rules, and all these things. Sometimes they'll add additional information like occurrences and all these things. But this is the basic funda how a mapping sheet will be there and how it will be represented for you. Okay. Yeah. Any questions till now? Okay. So now for this, we'll talk about the objects that are needed or that should be created in ESR as part of this requirement. Okay. So as part of this requirement, today we'll talk about the ESR objects. Okay. So for ESR objects, we for us to create interface. 1 second. Every time they'll change the perspective. Okay, so for us to create the interface objects, So we need to create objects that are relevant to sender and that are relevant to target or source or target. Okay. So now first object that you need is you need to specify the schema, right? In which format or in which schema you will receive the data, or in which schema you want to send the data. So that can be represented using data type. So what is the purpose of data type? It will be used to represent the schema, okay, of your source or target applications. Okay. Next we use message type object, where this will be referring to data type. So message type is not something that we create where we create all these fields and all these things. We don't create that, but wherein we create message type by referring to an existing data type that we have already created. So this will be referring to data type that we have already created, and then this this will be used in message mapping. Okay. Next, service interface. Service interface will be used uh, okay, so message type will be used as part of service interface, and this service interface will be used in operation mapping. Okay. Next, message mapping. Message type will be used here. Okay. Message type will be used as part of this message mapping. And now, why do we use this message mapping? Message mapping will be used to do data conversions. Okay. Next, operation mapping. Message mapping will be used as part of operation mapping. Okay. So these are the different objects that we create in ESR and the purpose of each and every object. Okay. So data type, it will be used to represent the schema, actual schema or structure of your source and target. So we create multiple data type objects, for one is for source and one is for target. Similarly, we create a message type which will be used where data type will be used here. As we don't use data type anywhere directly, that's why we create message type, and we use message type as part of our message mapping. Okay. The purpose of message type is it will be used as part of message mapping to represent the structure. Service interface, again same, similar to message mapping, we create service interface so that it can be used as part of operation mapping. Okay. So these are the objects that are needed and the purpose of each and every object. So now we'll try to create a data type. So we have already created one software component version, right? What is the software component version we created? Do you remember what is the software component version we created?
I think November batch something. So
I think we created this in another application. Fine. So we'll use this software component called college here. Okay. We'll try to create a new namespace. Okay, I'll create the namespace as nmovie, and then inside this namespace we will create all the folders. Okay, so we created this namespace. Under this I will create a folder for our first interface. Okay, okay, so now under this folder I'll create all the objects. So the first object that we discussed is data type. So data type will be part of interface objects category. So I'll go to interface objects and select the data type here. I'll provide the name as dt underscore emp underscore sender. Okay. So now this is how you get the data type when you try to create a data type. This is how you will get it. So now we have to provide the structure here. How you can provide it. Okay. So for that, by default, you will get the name here. The name that you have used here for creating the data type object, you will get the name here as a document name. Then you can right click on it and then select the option as insert and insert sub element. Okay. Now as you know that these are the fields that you will be getting from your source, so there is a chance for you to get data like this, right? Multiple records. So each line is nothing but one record, one employee data. Okay, so each line is nothing but one employee data for you. Okay, so in this case you have to represent each and every row as a record, separate record. So that's why we add one node here called record. Okay, so I'm adding sub element, and I'll add one node called an element called record. So now I see the element as record here, and there are two things that you need to keep in mind. You have to provide the type, XSD type as a string or integer, whatever it is, and occurrence as 0 to 1 or 0 to unbounded or something like that. Okay, what is this occurrence? I'll tell you all these things. So now I have provided one element as record, and I've given selected the type as a string and occurrence as 0 to unbounded. But this is not my actual element or field name. So first name, last name, location, company are the actual field names where I'm using this record to represent each and every record. Okay. So now what I have to do, I have to insert sub element for this, but you can see it is grayed out for you here. Why? Because when you provide a type as a string or integer or anything, boolean or anything for any particular element, it means it will be considered as a field or a child element. So if it is a child, you cannot have any child for it again. Okay, or if it is considered as a field, so if it is a field, then you cannot have any child again for it. That's why if you go for insert option, insert sub element is grayed out for you, wherein you can add another element at the same level of hierarchy. Okay, when I add test here, you can see both are in the same level of hierarchy, right? You cannot add a sub element here. If you want to change that, you should make sure that this is empty, then only you will get an option to add sub element for this. Okay, okay, now you can see this first name is added under this record here. Okay, now I can add string, and if I right click on this first name, you can see again sub element is grayed out because we have already selected type. So I don't want any sub-element for this because all the fields that I'm going to create should be in the same level of first name. So this is my last name. Select string. You can copy this. You can paste it as a Control-Shift-V, and then location. Again, you can add one more. What is the other field? Company. Okay, so these are the different fields that we have. Here. Okay, so this is how we create the structure where you create a record. Try to ensure that you create a record for each and every structure that you are going to create. A record as a root node is helpful for you to represent the schema internally during runtime. Okay, then first name, then last name, then location, and then company as its sub-elements or actual fields. So now what do we call this? So this first name we call it as a field, last name as a field, location, a company as a fields, whereas record we call it as a node here, not a field, node. So what is the difference between field and node? A node can have child elements or sub-elements, whereas a field cannot have sub-elements. Okay, and next thing that is important is the occurrence. Try to maintain the occurrence for node as 0 to unbounded all the time, and occurrence for field as 0 to 1 all the time. Why like that? I'll tell you. So I'll maintain the occurrence as 0 to 1 for all these fields. So the purpose of this is, you can see here, we consider this entire row as a single record. This is first employee, this is second employee, and this is third employee, like that. So what you observe here, we are getting multiple employee information where each employee information is being represented as a record here for you. When you are getting multiple, so you have to represent them accordingly internally in PI also, so that you can represent or you can access all the employee information. So that's why, to have that functionality, we will enable the occurrence as 0 to unbounded, so that we can have the scope to receive multiple records here, wherein each and every record can contain only one first name, one last name. If you observe here, we have multiple records, but each record we have only one first name, we have only one last name, we have only one location, and we have only one company for each and every record. We don't have two first name for first record, right? So that's what it is. So each record will contain only one first name, one last name, like that. That's why we give the occurrence as 0 to unbounded. 0 means a minimum occurrence, 1 means maximum occurrence. Okay, when you say it as 0 to 1, either you can get it, if you are getting the first name as part of that record, maximum times it can appear is only once. There is a chance of not even getting it. Okay, that's a purpose of 0 to 1. So the occurrence options are 0 to 1. It means minimum occurrence is 0, max is 1, which means this element can appear maximum of only once, or it may not even appear, okay, for you in the data. Occurrence 1 to 1 means minimum is 1, max is 1, which is nothing but it is mandatory. So it should appear at any cost. If it is not appearing, it will fail for you. Okay. 0 to unbounded, minimum is 0, maximum is unbounded. It means so this element can appear maximum of uh, infinite times, and or it may not even appear also, because the occurrence we have given it as minimum as 0. There is one more option, occurrence as 1 to unbounded, where you can see minimum is 1, maximum is unbounded. This element can appear maximum of infinite times, or it should appear at least once. Right? So this is how the occurrence representation will be done, the purpose or the meaning of each and every occurrence. Okay, next. So we created our source data type. We'll save it, activate it. Similarly, we create one more data type for our target, right? So dt underscore emp underscore target. Okay, so we add sub element as a record here. Again we add sub element here as a name. We add element here as a location. We add another element as company. Yeah, that's it, right? And then we provide the data types for all the fields, no, but not for node. Okay, so this is how we create source data type and target data type. Okay then. Um, yeah. That's it from my end for today. I have to close this session today here because I have other things to carry.